Hello everyone, my name is Oktay Algin, and today I'm going to talk about pronunciation. But before we start, this presentation is actually divided in two parts. That is because how our teacher wanted it. This is obviously the part one, and in this part I'm going to talk about what is pronunciation, the importance of pronunciation, and like some of the pronunciation features, and what can you do in order to improve your pronunciation, right? So in order to start, we should know what is pronunciation. So by definition, pronunciation is the way in which a word or a language is spoken, right? So what does that mean? So what So you know that words are created by sounds, right? So how does one create sounds? Well, you create sounds by pushing some air from your lungs to your mouth, and that air vibrates in a way that creates a sound. And when you put sounds in a correct order, you make words, and when you put words in a correct order, you make languages. So pronunciation is the way that you speak a language. So, why is this pronunciation thing is important, right? Why should I care about the way I speak? When I speak to my friends here in Turkey, they can understand me quite fine. But let's say when I speak to someone from UK or America, they might have a hard time understanding me. So a correct pronunciation can lead you to intelligibility, credibility, and it can give your accent an identity. So what are those things that I just said, like intelligibility, being credible, or like having an identity on your accent? So let's start with those, right? So first of all, intelligibility. What is intelligibility? Well, intelligibility in its simplest way is that it's the way that you get your point across, right? Clearly. It's the way people understand you clearly. So what this intelligibility adds to you that you are going to have some like safer and safer relationships. You can communicate clearly, and it can lead you to having a really successful business because like you can communicate, right? Communicate clearly and understandable. So if you don't have, if you can't communicate unintelligibly, you are going to have a hard time living in a day-to-day basis because if you can't get your point across, you are going to have a hard time, right? So the other thing that is important for your pronunciation is the identity of your accent, right? What is an identity is that it's a thing that gives your speech uniqueness. It's what makes your speech unique, right? And this identity thing can give your speech and your accent some like unique features. And these features can, differ from place to place. So in order to so give you an example, let's say you're talking to someone with an American accent and you are speaking in a Pakistani accent, right? So when you communicate with each other, just because of your accent's identities, you might have some trouble understanding each other. You might have a hard time understanding him, or he might have a hard time understanding you, right? So that's in order to avoid this, I'm going to talk about that in the further in the presentation. So let's get on to the other feature, which is credibility. So what's credibility is that being credible is the thing that makes you more believable, right? It makes you more trustworthy. So let me give you an example on this. Let's say you're giving a conference on some very scientific stuff, right? And you are the like best of the best, best in your field, right? But you speak in an Indian accent. Just because of that, even though like what you're saying is right and you are the best in your field, some people, just because of your accent, might tend to not believe you, right? Like for another example, just when a British man, British, when someone with a British accent, let's say, speaks the same things that you said with an Indian accent, uh, can be believed more than you, right? Because they're speaking in a British accent. Some accents have a tendency to, be more believable. So these things, this like credibility and identity thing can lead to so much, how should I say, discriminatory things, I mean, it can even lead to some violence. So, I mean, what can you do in order to like improve your pronunciation? Well, what some people do is that they can try to adopt a new accent, like British accent or an American accent, right? Or maybe some Australian accent. But to some people, this might seem as like a little bit inappropriate, and some people might just not want to change their accents, right? So let's say if you don't want to change your accent, what can you do is that, I mean, the best advice that I can give to you if you don't want to change your accent is that you just need to speak to people, right? When you speak to people, you directly see the elements that makes your speech unintelligible to the other people, right? Because what you can do when you speak is that when someone doesn't understand what you said, you ask them like, what part didn't you understand? And they say which part they didn't understand, and you try to improve from there, right? So as an example, I myself don't speak in a way where I mix both British and American accents. But I predominantly speak in a British accent, but I don't speak like every word in a British accent, right? So, for example, I don't say the word can't in a British way because in British accent you say can't, but I don't like the way you say that word, so I mix up accents and I mix the American pronunciation of the word can't, and I say can't. So that's another viable option that you can use, without, I mean, you can merge two or three, how should I say, accents together and create your own unique accent. So this is the end of the part one. I'm going to talk about rhoticity and all the other things in part two. So thank you for listening on part one, and I'll see you again in part two. Thank you.